You are standing at a threshold that has been waiting for your hand, and this Saturday may be the day when the delay finally shows its face. The door in front of you is not just wood and metal. It is the place where false voices lose their disguise and where God begins to show you what was hidden in plain sight. You have felt the strain of that nearness before, when a room looked normal, but your spirit no longer agreed with the air inside it. There is a quiet courage rising in you now, the kind that does not shout, the kind that simply refuses to keep pretending. A hard yes from the wrong place can wound you more than a careful no, and a closed door, when God is in it, is not rejection, but mercy. What looks like withholding may be protection, and what feels like interruption may be revelation. You are not being pushed away from your path. You are being kept from entering what would have named the wrong story as truth. Maybe you have stood in a kitchen with a cup gone cold in your hand, staring at a message that changed the mood of the whole morning. Maybe you have sat in your car after a long day, the engine off, the windshield holding the light while your thoughts kept turning over the same name, the same promise, the same doubt. The body knows when something is off before the mind admits it, and that is why your shoulders have been carrying more than they should. Your breath has been shorter, your chest tighter, your silence heavier, because some part of you has been listening for the real voice beneath the noise. The scene is ordinary, but the weight in it is not ordinary. And God often uses ordinary moments to expose the lie that dressed itself like concern. You do not need a dramatic sign to know that not every voice around you came from truth. Sometimes the truth arrives as a calm refusal to keep trusting what has already fractured your peace. That refusal is not coldness, it is discernment, learning how to stand. You remember how some words sounded wise at first, almost tender, almost careful, and only later did they leave a stain in your memory. A sentence can be polished and still be false, and a person can speak softly while moving against your good. The hurt is not only in what was said, it is in the way you started bending yourself to fit a version of reality that was never safe. Your throat tightens when you remember it, as if your own body is still trying to protect the truth that your mouth could not yet name. Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment. This is where the spiritual meaning becomes plain. God may be showing you that the confusion was never meant to become your permanent residence. What looked like delay may have been a shield, and what looked like silence may have been a warning you could not yet translate. The old habit was to call every open path a blessing, but now you are being taught to ask whether the path was opened by peace or by pressure. If you ignore that question, you return to the same pain in a different outfit. If you receive it, you begin to walk with cleaner steps and a steadier heart. There is a line from the life of faith that keeps echoing here. The narrow gate does not flatter the crowd, and it does not reward haste. You may have wanted a faster answer, a cleaner explanation, a public vindication, but God often works through the slower mercy of discernment. I see you at the edge of a hallway late at night, a lamp low on the table, a room quiet enough for the smallest thought to sound loud. In that stillness, the lie loses some of its power because it can no longer hide behind movement. Your mind may replay old conversations, yet your spirit is beginning to ask different questions, and that change matters more than the noise around it. There is something holy in a boundary that stops what should not continue. There is also something costly about that boundary, because the old attachment does not leave gently. But the cost of truth is always lighter than the cost of living inside an invention. So stay there a little longer, because the door that will not open may be protecting the life that is finally learning to breathe. You have called some things disappointment when they were actually rescue. You have called some interruptions bad timing when they were actually mercy with a firm hand. You have called yourself slow for not trusting sooner. But the slowness may have been your soul learning to survive the noise. The body remembers betrayal in small ways, a hand that pauses before answering, a stomach that tightens when a name appears, a sudden tiredness that comes from carrying suspicion too long. God is not ashamed of that tiredness, and he is not surprised by your caution. The truth is that discernment often arrives after trust has been bruised, because wisdom grows where innocence was tested. So when the door closes, do not rush to force a reason into it. Let the closing speak for itself. A closed door can be a sentence of safety. It can also be the beginning of clarity. There is a difference between a path that is blocked and a path that is blessed, and your spirit knows the difference before your explanations catch up. You may be sitting on the edge of your bed, one foot on the floor, phone face down beside you, feeling that quiet conflict between what you hoped and what you can no longer ignore. The room has not changed much, but your relationship to it has, because now every sound carries a question. What if the thing you wanted most was also the thing that would have made you smaller? What if the mercy of God was not in giving you everything you asked for, but in refusing what would have trained you to live without peace? That is a hard sentence, yet it is often how correction feels before it feels like comfort. The old interpretation says that a closed door means you were unwanted. The new interpretation says you were being kept for what could hold you. And if that is true, then disappointment is not your final language. You have probably noticed how lies depend on repetition, as if they can become true by staying near you long enough. But truth does not need that kind of pressure. Truth stands even when it stands alone in a hallway with no applause, no witness, and no immediate reward. Your tired eyes have seen enough to know that every strong claim is not necessarily a safe claim. The face may be familiar, the tone may be measured, the timing may even seem kind, but your chest still tells the story before your arguments do. That is why this moment matters. You are being invited to trust the inner witness that has been waking up slowly. Not every delay is confusion. Not every closed route is loss. Some of them are the first visible proof that mercy is active, where you once felt stranded. And when that becomes clear, you stop begging doors that were never meant for your peace. You may be thinking of the last time you ignored that small warning because you wanted the relationship, the opportunity, or the answer to survive. The warning did not shout. It leaned in quietly like a hand on a shoulder, but you were already committed to a different story. Now you can feel the aftertaste of that choice in your bones, especially in the places where trust became too expensive. The beautiful part is that God does not despise your history of trying. He uses it to teach you the difference between urgency and invitation. Urgency pushes you to decide before you have peace. Invitation waits until your heart is steady enough to recognize what is true. This Saturday may not be about punishment at all. It may be about separation that saves you from confusing performance with covenant. When a thing is false, time eventually reveals its seams. When a thing is true, time reveals its strength. Hold that difference close, because it will keep you from calling every open hand a gift. If any of this has landed in you, write this in the comments. Euvejo iso. Do not write a sentence around it. Do not decorate it, just the phrase as it is, because there is power in naming what your spirit has recognized. The door in this image is not only outside you, it is also inside you, where old agreements still try to hold the latch. Your hand has been near it for a long time, and now the hesitation is beginning to change. Come back to me after you write it, because the next part belongs to the one who is willing to see clearly. Maybe you have not wanted to admit how much strength it takes to stop forcing what keeps breaking. Maybe you have called that strength by another name, like stubbornness or fear, when it was actually wisdom learning to breathe. And if the phrase feels simple, that is because truth often is. You know that moment when a hallway goes quiet and every door seems to listen back to you, as if the house itself is waiting for your choice. That is what discernment can feel like. Not a storm, not a spectacle, but a steady awareness that the next step matters. The light at the far end of the corridor does not rush you, and it does not shame you, but it exposes the difference between what you hoped for and what was actually given. Your hands may be restless, yet your spirit is becoming less negotiable. That is a holy change. It means you are less likely now to call manipulation guidance just because it arrived wrapped in urgency. It also means you are learning to let peace be a witness instead of a bonus. The closed door is not there to humiliate you. It is there to keep the lie from wearing your name. And when that becomes your inner language, you stop asking the wrong thing to become right. There are moments when you try to keep moving, but your body refuses to help the old denial. Your feet slow, your breath deepens, and your whole frame seems to say that you cannot carry both the truth and the mask anymore. You have been through enough to know that confusion has a texture, and peace has one too. Confusion scatters you across too many possibilities, while peace gathers you into one clear place. The spiritual meaning here is not that every hard thing is divine and every easy thing is false. It is that God can use a closed passage to reveal the difference between appetite and assignment. What you wanted may still be understandable, but it may not be yours to keep. And that is where grief and mercy stand side by side. Grief says, I wanted this. Mercy says, I kept you from what could have worn you down. If you stay open to that mercy, you will not lose your future by clinging to a counterfeit present. You may still hear the old voice that says, prove yourself, explain yourself, go back and make them understand. But some doors do not need more explanation. They need your agreement that they are finished. You have sat long enough with the ache of wanting a different ending, and now the ache is teaching you to release what cannot become clean through effort alone. A false voice often survives by making you think that your peace is selfish and your caution is overreaction. Yet your body has already testified against that lie. The tightness in your chest, the heaviness in your shoulders, the way sleep has drifted in pieces, all of that has been speaking while your mind kept trying to negotiate. God may be using this Saturday to separate what was merely persuasive from what was truly aligned. That separation can sting, but it will not destroy you. It will show you where your strength has been leaking. There is a reason some memories come back with sharper edges at night. The dark makes what was hidden feel heavier, but it also makes the false shine less attractive. Maybe you have remembered a sentence, a promise or a glance that once seemed harmless and now feels different under the light. That shift is not bitterness, it is awakening. Your spirit is learning to read what your heart once ignored. You do not have to pretend that every lesson arrived gently. Some truths arrive with embarrassment because they expose how much of your energy was spent protecting someone else's version of reality. Still, God does not waste what He reveals. He uses it to train your discernment and restore your steadiness. The open question now is not whether you were sincere. The question is whether what stood before you was sincere enough to hold the weight of your trust. That question will save you more than one answer would. Sometimes the mercy of God sounds like a quiet no in the middle of your own insistence. You feel it in the hesitation before sending the message, in the pause before answering the call, in the hand that does not want to reopen what has already been closed. This is not weakness, it is formation. The old pattern was to keep access open even when the soul was bleeding. The new pattern is to guard the gate without shame. That guard is not fear when it is led by peace, it is stewardship. It is you finally understanding that access is not owed to every voice that asks for it. The wrong person can speak the right words, but cannot sustain the weight of truth behind them. And once you see that, the manipulation loses much of its spell. The door remains closed and your life begins to stand straighter because of it. The corridor image keeps returning because you are still between two ways of seeing. One way says the closed door is proof that something precious was taken. The other says it is proof that something harmful was stopped before it entered deeper. I want you to feel how different those two interpretations are in the body. The first makes you collapse inward. The second lets you lift your head. The first makes you reach for control. The second lets you breathe again. God is often doing his clearest work where control has finally run out. That is why this feels like a threshold rather than a conclusion. Thresholds are uncomfortable because they demand that you live between what you knew and what is now being revealed. But that is where your true discernment becomes visible. The door is closed, and yet your future is not. You are not being asked to celebrate every loss, but you are being asked to stop calling every loss a mistake. Some losses are the mercy of being redirected before harm could settle in. Some losses are the proof that what looked stable was only borrowing strength from your hope. The people around you may not understand why you are quieter now, why you hesitate before agreeing, why you no longer hand out trust the way you once did. That is fine. The body learns faster than explanation, and your body has already learned what your mouth is still translating. A shorter breath can become a wiser pause. A slower answer can become a cleaner boundary. A closed door can become the place where your spirit stops bleeding into what never honored it. If this Saturday brings anything at all, let it bring that kind of clarity. Clarity is not loud, but it changes everything. There is a hidden mercy in realizing that you do not need to keep auditing the wound to prove it was real. You do not need to keep returning to every detail to know that something in you has been asking for safety, not more argument. The room where this happened may still exist in memory, with its lamp, its chair, its window, its quiet objects that seem innocent now. But innocence is not the same as truth, and you know that now. What was said there may have sounded reasonable, yet the aftermath told a different story. Your heart does not need to be shamed for learning late. It needs to be strengthened for learning now. That is the work of this hour, not self-accusation, but honest seeing. And honest seeing will keep you from walking back into a place that taught your peace to flinch. I am seeing the same door from another angle now, and the angle matters. From one side it looks like refusal, but from the other side it looks like a boundary that preserved your dignity. From one side it looks like loss, but from the other side it looks like distance from a lie that would have kept growing. You may not be able to explain the whole story yet, and that is acceptable. Discernment often begins as a simple discomfort with what used to feel normal. Then it grows into language, then into conviction, then into a steadier way of living. That growth is already happening in you. You are not imagining the shift. You are not too sensitive. You are learning that the soul can become allergic to deception after long exposure. And when that happens, the very thing that once held you in place starts to feel impossible to inhabit. There is a difference between being misunderstood and being misled, and you are learning to tell them apart. Misunderstanding can be corrected with patience, but deception often survives by asking you to doubt your own alarm. That is why your inner life has felt so unsettled around certain names and certain promises. You were not losing your mind. You were gaining sight. The spirit grows sharper where it is tested, and the cost of that sharpness is often sorrow before it is relief. Still, sorrow is not the enemy here. Sorrow can be the clean water that washes false certainty off your hands. What remains after that washing is not perfect knowledge, but enough clarity to protect your next step. So do not rush to rewrite what your body has already understood. Let it speak. Let it finish speaking. The closed door is part of that speech. You have likely noticed that some truths arrive without fireworks and still change the shape of your day. The light in the hallway does not need to flash for you to know where to place your foot. In the same way, the quiet closing of a door can become the clearest thing in your week. The temptation now is to reopen what was already answered, because the heart prefers familiar pain to unfamiliar trust. But the wiser path is to stay where peace can find you. This is not about being passive. It's about refusing to re-enter what asked you to betray yourself in order to remain. A good boundary may look like stillness from the outside, but inside it is a living act of faith. Faith in what God has shown you. Faith in what your body has recognized. Faith that truth does not need your panic to survive. If you are still tempted to translate this whole season as loss, then listen carefully to the deeper layer beneath that feeling. A loss can be real and still be redemptive. A no can hurt and still be holy. A closed door can leave a mark and still save your direction. You have enough history now to know that not all pain is equal. Some pain teaches you how to endure. Some pain teaches you how to refuse. Some pain teaches you how to leave before the damage becomes identity. This one may be teaching you the last of those. There is dignity in leaving the lie behind, even if your voice shakes while you do it. There is dignity in no longer arguing with a door that was never meant to open. And there is dignity in letting the silence become your witness until your peace has fully returned. You have been trained, maybe too well, to think that a real answer must arrive with a full explanation. But sometimes God gives a firmer gift, the ability to recognize that the explanation is no longer necessary because the pattern has already spoken. That is what maturity feels like at first. It does not feel triumphant. It feels sober. It feels like standing in a room and finally noticing that the air has changed. It feels like your mind slowing down enough to let your spirit catch up. And once that happens, the false voice loses its authority because it can no longer dress confusion up as destiny. You may still ache for closure, but closure is not always a speech. Sometimes closure is a door that stays shut and a heart that no longer calls it home. That kind of closure is painful, but it is also clean. I need you to write these words in the comments now. Estu pronto. Let the phrase be simple and present, because this is about readiness, not performance. The closed door has done its work when you can face it without begging it to become what it is not. Your next breath matters more than your old argument. Your next step matters more than your old explanation. Come back to me after you write it, because this is the point where surrender starts to feel active instead of passive. There is a steadiness waiting on the other side of that phrase, and it is not small. It is the steadiness of someone who has stopped asking a lie to identify itself as truth. You may feel the urge to revisit the whole story one more time, to test the edges, to see whether the door might still open if you press it from a different angle. That urge is understandable, but it is not your guide. Your guide is the peace that remains when the pressure lifts. It is the quiet in your chest when you stop forcing what was never aligned. It is the softened grip in your hands when you finally admit that control has not been healing you. This is how God often reveals what was hidden, not by adding more noise, but by removing the excuse that kept the noise alive. The moment you stop insisting, the shape of the lie becomes easier to see. The moment you stop defending what drained you, the room inside you becomes more livable, and that livable place is where discernment settles in without fear. There is an old pattern that says, if you lose access, you must have lost value, but that pattern is false and you are beginning to know it. A closed door can protect value instead of cancelling it. A refusal can preserve dignity instead of erasing it. A boundary can restore capacity instead of shrinking it. You may still be mourning the version of the future you imagined, yet another future is already being kept alive by the very thing you thought was blocking you. That is why despair does not get the final word here. Your life is larger than the one hallway you can see. Your calling is larger than the conversation that failed you. And your peace is larger than the explanation you keep trying to extract. What was hidden is being uncovered, and what was false is losing its stage. You have reached the point where the old story no longer satisfies the evidence in your own body. Your pulse knows, your shoulders know, your sleep knows, even your patience knows that something has shifted. That shift is not dramatic in the way the flesh prefers, but it is decisive in the way the spirit understands. This is what it means to be shown who lied. Not that every detail becomes public at once, but that the inner witness becomes impossible to silence. Then the mask slips not because you attacked it, but because God let the light remain where darkness had grown comfortable. That kind of unveiling is humbling, and it can feel lonely for a moment. Yet loneliness is not abandonment. Sometimes it is the quiet room where truth can finally speak without interruption. Stay with that room. It is teaching you how to trust what does not flatter you. The reason this matters so much is that deception does not only steal time, it teaches you to doubt your own peace. Once that doubt settles in, everything becomes harder to name, and you start needing other people to translate your own life back to you. But that dependency is being broken here. You are learning to hear the sound of a closed door and no longer interpret it as defeat. You are learning to notice how your breath changes when a thing is no longer yours to carry. You are learning that the holy can be as simple as release. That is a strong lesson, and it will not leave you unchanged. It will make you slower to promise, quicker to pause, and wiser about access. It will also spare you from repeating the same wound under a different name. So let the lesson settle. It is not punishment. It is protection. And now, because the turning has been made plain, I want you to write this identity in the comments. Estoy desperto. Say it as one who has come back to awareness, not as one who has won a contest. The point is not to perform certainty. The point is to acknowledge that your eyes are open where they were once tired. Come back to me after you write it, because the next breath belongs to the one who sees the door correctly. You are not standing before a failure. You are standing before a mercy that would not let the lie become your home. That is why the moment feels solemn. It is the solemnity of waking up. It is the solemnity of knowing that truth has been near you all along. You are being drawn toward a cleaner way of living, one where you do not have to keep interpreting every uneasy feeling as weakness. Your unease may have been the beginning of wisdom, and wisdom often starts like that, small and stubborn and hard to explain. The world around you may still look unchanged, but the center of your attention is shifting. What once felt urgent is losing its power to command you. What once felt persuasive is losing its shine. And what once felt impossible to release is beginning to loosen without your forcing it. That is how inner freedom often arrives, not with fireworks, but with a deepening refusal to keep feeding what is false. So do not despise the quietness of this hour. It is doing more work than the noise ever did. The door is closed and your soul is finally allowed to tell the truth about it. You may think the deepest healing would come from a perfect explanation, but sometimes the deepest healing comes from being spared the wrong future. That is a hard grace to accept because it does not flatter your plans. Still, it fits the shape of the story you are living. There were places you were about to give more of yourself than you could safely afford. There were words you were about to trust that had already failed the test of consistency. There were promises you were about to build a home on, and God interrupted that construction before the roof could collapse. Attention, you need to prepare now. I put together an exclusive resource for those who feel set apart for something greater, but live surrounded by noise, distractions, and mental overload. This is a 30-day journey that will transform your life. A guided path to armor your mind and prepare for what's coming with daily practices of focus, boundaries, and discipline. Stop negotiating with the noise. Learn to spot distractions before they control you, and strengthen your mind. Also available in an immersive audio version. Over 10 Zuru readers have already transformed their lives through the 30-day journey. Thousands of people have already started this transformation. People like you who are tired of living in the fog. Ordinary people who decided to stop accepting mental chaos. Take advantage of this limited time offer only this month. Access your link just below in the pinned comment.